I'm Rainy, and today I'm going to be doing a speed paint of my best boy, Naruko Speedpaint. He is from a cycling anime called Yowamushi Pedal. He is a speedy little cyclist, a sprinter from Osaka, and I love him very much. And August 28th is his birthday, so I decided to make a picture. And as we're just getting things started with this YouTube channel, I decided to record a speed paint so that I could show some of my techniques and share some of my digital tips and tricks with you. All right, let's get started. So first I'm going to start off laying out the flat colors, and I do this with a pencil brush so that I can later select these areas or change the colors easily as I need to. Some of these I'm using the lasso tool and then doing edit fill. Now here I'm making a shape that's the same color as the flat behind it, as I'm doing a limited palette. So I've just put that on a new layer with a drop shadow, the same color on a multiply, so that it'll stand out from the pieces behind it. I wouldn't leave it for a final, but we're going to be painting over all of this. So here I'm using the lasso tool and the transform tools to make the pose more dynamic. I don't always draw the most dynamic poses right off the bat, so I find letting myself edit as I go through is one of the best things about digital art for me. He is my son. I adore him. Naruko is such a great character, and I'd really recommend Yowamushi Pedal, the anime. Naruko's a talented boy who makes me feel confident that I can have friends who love me even though I also am bombastic and can be annoying at times. Anyway, watch Yowamushi Pedal. So here I'm using a photo reference for the shirt, but definitely as this is a stylized piece, I make that my own. So I look at where the folds occur and I just kind of freehand base it off of that. I try to keep the flats the basic color. So the shirt is white. I want to keep it mostly white, using shading as sparingly as I can. That is a good technique for more cartoony pieces like this. So with the arm here, I want to make sure that all my strokes aren't going up and down the length of the arm, but I'm also using horizontal strokes or strokes across the planes to indicate planar structure. This also helps the eye not just glide down the arm, but lets it linger there. So when you're painting shapes with dimension, make sure some lines are going parallel with the shape and some lines are going perpendicular. So at the beginning I decided that the parts I wanted to be detailed and I wanted to focus on in this piece were the hands and the mouth. With a cartoony piece, if you overly detail every single thing, it can be a little chaotic to look at, and you can end up with results like those creepy Mario 3D models where you can see every pore. So I like to just keep most of it simple and then detail only one or two parts. With this, I was actually holding a small cup in my hand. Here I painted the basic shapes as I thought they were, and then I actually looked at my hand and saw all of the ways that it was different than my expectations. So I thought that his fingers would curve around it visibly. But when I looked at the cup in my hand, I realized that you actually could not see the curve of the fingers in that way. They were actually pointing straight towards you. And it was only after experimenting with it and seeing how wrong my initial guess was that I got the hand looking right. You also might notice I'm using a limited palette. I'm only letting myself use a light peach, a medium peach, a dark pink, and a purpley gray. And it can be difficult to work with a limited palette, but I think that's really what makes beautiful paintings stand out from something like a photograph. Because if you want something where the browns are really brown, the greens are really green, the reds are really red, you could just take a picture. I think limited palette really makes your work pop as an illustration. So even though it's tough, I would definitely challenge yourself to do it. And then you can do all kinds of fun things like local color and relative color that I'll talk about in a future video. So here I've finished detailing the fingers, and I'm going around the edge with a small airbrush. Now I like to paint entirely with the airbrush because I think it gives you a lot of control over where your shadows are crispy and where they are soft. So you can go ahead and you can select the flats because they're done with the pencil tool, and use like a big brush to get that really soft gradient effect, and then use a smaller brush to get more specific, and then use a tiny little brush to add some highlights. I know painting with an airbrush is a little bit unconventional because sometimes it can look too soft and mushy, but because I use the small airbrush so much, I think it works. So here I figured it would be easier to just do the whipped cream without worrying about the sprinkles at this point, but of course I forgot to add them till the end. Now, with the collarbone and with the neck area, you'll see me struggling with how detailed I want to make it. So I come from a traditional painting and figure painting background, so my tendency is, okay, I'll add in all of the anatomical details. But because this is a cartoony piece, that can actually make it look too detailed and maybe kind of bruised. So when I noticed that, I realized I have to simplify it so that it looks really cohesive with the rest of the picture. So here I've simplified and brought back a bit of that flat color, that neutral skin tone back into it. Now I'm going into my favorite part, which is shading the face, which takes about 2 seconds comparatively. I'm using that limited palette. So where I have a dark color, I'm going in with that red to really make it pop. With the hair, there are a few approaches you can take with the hair. You can do kind of a Nendoroid approach where the hair looks like wax or clay, just big pieces. You can do a more cosplay wig approach where you're thinking about the shapes, but you're detailing some hairs in it. Or you can go really super detailed and draw every individual hair, but I actually think that tends to flatten out your picture and be kind of a shortcut. Because if you're using the same light, medium, dark, little individual hairs everywhere, it can actually make the hair look flatter. So it's always good to think about the dimension, especially in a simplified cartoonish painting. So here I'm just clarifying the hair shapes. And actually you can see here I was getting a little bit too small and too precious with the brush strokes. That would have taken a long time to do and wouldn't have looked as good. So I just went with a slightly larger airbrush. Now, right now it looks kind of soft. It looks kind of like it's made of clay or yarn. It's not really the nice crisp texture I wanted. But I can't get that by adding lines. So what I decided to do was I decided to go in around the edge with a small airbrush, a very small airbrush, pressing quite hard so it barely looks blurry at all, and just crisp up those edges and make the edges look really sharp and wispy. That way it really gives you the appearance of hair without having to put too much detail into the body of the hair itself. And of course adding light and dark. Hair tends to be darker underneath pieces or behind the ears, around the neck. And I've added in a pinkish red and an orangish red as well, just to give it a little more variety. And here I'm even blurring those individual hairs a little bit more so that it looks cohesive. Here I'm detailing the eyebrows. And with the eyebrows too, I got a little carried away with the detail and then had to rein it back in. It's just about looking at your drawing zoomed out, having another canvas open, zoomed out, and glancing up at it from time to time to make sure that your zoomed out version looks as good as it does when you're zoomed in at 100%. Because a lot of times when you zoom in and then you zoom out, you realize all that detail you just poured in doesn't actually look good when you're viewing the whole thing. So here I'm doing my favorite part, the eyes. I like to add limbal rings and some nice lower shines. And that's my favorite part, and it took about 5 seconds to do. But again, this picture isn't about the eyes. This picture is about the hand and the mouth. One of my favorite Japanese illustrators loves to do a lot of detail on the mouth and a lot of detail on small teeth. And we just got a new kitten, and he has really tiny teeth. So I kind of wanted to go for a little bit of a kitty mouth look with some like real small, cute teeth and little fangs. And so I had a lot of fun detailing that out. But then again, here I went a little bit too tiny, and I actually had to go back and make some of those just one tooth. So there, painting the lips, adding a little bit of the blush, rendering out the last few things, and adding some more contrast. With the airbrush too, it's really good because you can select colors from the faded middle area and blend it really smoothly. So here I'm doing color adjustment. I use color balance, then I put some gradients over the top to add a bit of variety, and then I use selective color. And I go through and I literally try every single slider until I've got it looking like I want, and then I turn the layers off and on to make sure I really like it. Here I forgot to do the cupcake. Here on the top part, it looked a little too samey with all those 4 lumps that were the same size, so I combined those 2 of those into 1 lump, and it made it look a lot better. So when you upload something to Twitter as a PNG, you should always save it as a PNG interlaced and have at least 1 transparent pixel so that Twitter can't overcompress your colors and add all these nasty little artifacts to it. So here's the finished piece. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them down in the comments or at me on Twitter. The link to the final picture is below if you'd like to see it or retweet it, and watch Yowamushi Pedal. Okay, till next time. Bye!